In this video, I'll be explaining how we can use the Lambda function in order to start and stop the EC2 instance that we'll be launching here and storing the instance ID to the system manager parameter store right here, and from our function we'll be retrieving that value, and once the start and stop is done, we will use the simple notification service in order to send the email to the team letting them know about the status. And finally, we'll use the EventBridge in order to create the rules so we can schedule, let's say, stopping our server every midnight at Friday and starting back again on Monday, so that we can save a cost while we don't use the server. After opening the AWS console, let's go ahead and launch the EC2 server, which we'll be using to test in our scenario. Let's go to the EC2 dashboard. Either you can search here EC2, go to the dashboard, running zeros, so go there, launch instance. So this is the new console for launching the instance from console. Let's go ahead and name as a test server. I'm gonna use any image will be fine for our case. Let's say the Debian, T2 micro. Just go ahead and use any of the key, right? Create a security group. So okay, let's go ahead and launch the EC2 server. It's launching V1. So this one is in the pending state. Now our instance is in our running state. So let me just grab the instance ID and save it to the system manager parameter store. So we have our parameter right here. Here I have created a new project called schedule EC2 instance. Let me go ahead and create a new file. So since we have our EC2 server in the running state, so let's go ahead and write the stop instance and test it. Let's call the border 3. It's resolving. We define the Lambda handler. Context. Okay, let's define the region, what we are using. This one. And let's define the EC2 client. 3.client. Define that's a EC2 region. Let's give it like this one. Okay. Here, since we have our instance ID stored in parameter store, so first we need to retrieve the instance ID for whatever server we want to stop. So let's go to the helper function and define it. Over here, let's go to the border 3, get instance ID. It takes a region. Okay, that's stored in SM, so we define the client for it. The name that we created in order to save our EC2 instance. As you can see, the name would be an instance ID. Let's just copy it, copy, and paste it over here. Okay. Let me go ahead and call this Lambda handler. There is no event, no context, nothing. All right, let's just run it. As you can see, we are able to retrieve the parameter store, the value that we store there. So this is the value that we need to retrieve. Okay, now here. Now let's go ahead and parse that value. Value we need. Let's go ahead and see if there is some white space that if in case we edit. So let's just go ahead and remove that white space. Some white space. Since we store our value as a string list, so usually if there are multiple instances, we save those value in the with the comma separated. So we're just gonna split and store as instance ID. And finally we return that instance ID. Now in our stop instance Lambda handler, let's go ahead and since this returns some value, let's store that value as an instance ID. Okay, now let's call the response, define EC2 dot call the API for stop instance. We pass the instance IDs, so which would be storing in the system manager right here. Before running this file, let me quickly show our EC2 server, which is in our running state. You can see it is in the running state. So after we run our function, this state should be moved to the stopping and finally to the stop state. Let me go ahead and run the program. Okay, the instance ID must be instance ID hibernate dry run force. Let's try to see the error. Let's go ahead and print this one just to see what are our instance ID. Response is to, oh I see, okay, it's the small t. So now let's save it and let me run the this Lambda handler one more time. Run. Okay. All right, one more time. We get the instance ID. STANCES. No. Okay, it should be just this one. That was a typo. Save it. Let me go ahead and run it. All right, that's the instance ID. We are stopping that, and we got the response. It's in the running state. Let's go ahead and see. It's now in the stopping. So now if you see, if it is in the stop state, so we were successfully able to stop our EC2 server. Now let's go ahead and write the code on the start instance. So where we'll be basically starting our server that we just stopped. For this, I'll be simply using the code from our stop instance handler. So just copy, start. So instead of the stop, we'll simply using the start API. Save it. Let me go ahead and run this form. If you see here, it's in the state instant, the stopped. Now it's running, like just move from pending to running. So we are able to start an instance defining the Lambda handler in Python. After stopping or starting the EC2 server, we like to notify our team members so they would be aware what is going on. In that case, we will be using the another service called as an SNS, AWS SNS, which is a simple notification service which we will be using in order to send an email. Okay, let's go ahead and search as an SNS, open in new tab. So this is the service that we're going to use to send the email. First, I need to create the topic, create topic. Now, under our SNS topic, we need to create a subscription. We create the subscription. You can see here it is as a pending confirmation. We go to our mailbox, see a notification email, confirm subscription. Subscription is confirmed. Go back to SNS, simply refresh it. You now see the status is confirmed. Now we can use this SNS topic in order to send the email to the users. Let me get the ARN of this topic. Let's copy and we will be using this ARN later in our code to publish the notification on this topic. Since we will be sending notification on both stop and instance, so let's go ahead and in our help function comment this is the ARN for that topic. Let's define a function. Let's say the send Now let's go to the stop instance right here. Save it. Similar to the stop instance, let's just copy that one. Now let me go ahead and run this function. Over here in our console, since we stop the instance, so we see as it stopped. Go to our mailbox, back to inbox. If you see here, status of the EC2 instance, stopping EC2 instance with that ID. Let's go ahead and test our start instance handler too. If you see here, it's right now stopped. Let me refresh it. It's in the pending. Right, let's go to our mailbox, back right here, starting the EC2 server with that ID. Now we have our code ready to deploy to the Lambda function. So let's go ahead and create the Lambda function in AWS. Now go to the Lambda. It's been created. Let me go ahead and create another function to stop. Here we can see our stop instance function is been created. We will be deploying our code through AWS CLI. Let's go ahead and open the terminal right here. ls. First, in order to deploy, I need to create a zip of that function. Zip says function start. Now I need to update the function code of that Lambda. If I come here in the console, I see as a last modified is 8 minutes. Let me go ahead and refresh this one so we can verify whether our function is updated or not. Modified last 1 minute ago. Okay, so we can see here our function is there, our code is there, the helper as well as. Now the point is, if you see over here the handler, we need to update our handler too, so we can point to this file. Let's go ahead and update our handler. Let me go ahead and refresh the page and see whether the handler is updated or not. If you see here, the handler is updated, the code is updated. Let's do the similar thing to the stop instance. We are here in the console. Let me go ahead and refresh it. All right, the code is updated. Okay, let's see the handler. So the handler is updated. Here in our Lambda function, let me go ahead and add the return statement. Now let's go ahead and test these two functions. Let's see, since our instance is in a running state, I'm going to test the stop instance first. Go to the test, create a new event. Let's see, is the testing stop. So this one is just a dummy test. Let's save it. All right, let's go ahead and run the test. Okay, we got an error message, the tax timeout. So let's go ahead and see the timeout. Config timer stream. Let's go ahead and increase that. Okay, let's do like, let's give the 5 minute. Oops. 5 minute. I'm gonna, okay, all right, save it. Let's go ahead and do over here too for other function too. Okay, now let's go ahead and test one more time. Based on this error, we can say, because like our Lambda function doesn't have a permission to call the other AWS service. Okay, now let's go ahead and on the permission, if you see the role name, let's open that. Let's go ahead and add some permission. So that's the first one is we used SSM to get the parameter. So let's go ahead and I'll give that read only. Other one is we call SNS2 to publish the notification. So I'll give the full access. And the other one that we used was EC2 to start and stop the server. For right now, let me give the full EC2 full access. All right, attach policies. Okay, these are the policies that is needed. So let me go ahead and run the test one more time. Test. As you can see, we get a response that we printed. So let's go back into the C in the mailbox. We are able to see the status, stopping EC2 instance. Go back to the instance. We see that's in the stop state. So we were successfully able to test our stop instance function. Let's go ahead and test our start instance function. Let me close this too. This one, we need to change our permission. Now you want to schedule, like let's say we want to stop our server Friday midnight and start the server on Monday like 4 in the morning. So in order to do that, we use the EventBridge to schedule those events. Go to the EventBridge. Right. So we create the rule over here so we can schedule our starting and stopping our server. After creating this function, let's just go ahead and verify to our Lambda whether the permission is attached or no. So EventBridge should invoke the Lambda functions. Go to the config, permission, register based. You can see the policies being attached over here. Otherwise, you need to attach those policies. Similar to this one, stop, config, permission, right here. In this way, we can use the Lambda function to start and stop instance, where we can store this instance ID in a system manager and use this SNS in order to send the notification to the team, letting them know what is the current status, and we can use the EventBridge in order to schedule what time we want to start and stop instance. This way we can save a cost of running the server.